Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. For all you Audie fans, I am sorry to tell you that my baby is outside playing. Now, it's cold and dark, but hey, he is undeterred. If he decides he wants to come back in, he will go sit on the porch and shriek at me, so I'll go let him in which case we will have a little photobomb kitty with us. But in the meanwhile, there's no traffic on the streets, and pretty soon he's not going to be able to do this. So I'm letting him enjoy himself, and we are just going to hope he shows up before I am through filming this video. So before we get into this, I did want to mention something. New glasses. So those of you who are sharp-eyed probably already figured that out. The fact is that the glasses I use for making these videos are rimless. So they all pretty much look alike. But yes, these are new. And let me just take these off for a moment. And here. I got these along with them. I was disappointed in these. I got these as sunglasses and therefore hoped they would be darker. They're not very dark at all, but hey, I like the color, so I'm fine with it. I will cope. A little bit of a disappointment, but not enough to encourage me to try to send them back, which frankly I've never done with prescription glasses. I don't know how the process works, but you'll see in a moment why I'm keeping them. So, sunglasses. And these two are sunglasses, but these are transitions, so they're perfectly clear when I am indoors and darken up quite a bit when I go out. So, let me take these off. The two aviators, by the way, I started wearing that style of glasses in the 1970s. I'm still wearing it today. I'm perfectly contented with my aviators. All three pair, and this is why I'm not sending the sunglasses back. Total cost, including shipping, $133.55. And do keep in mind, I have one of those kind of dicey prescriptions that, my Coke bottle lenses, basically. So, if you are not getting your glasses online, please do consider it. Obviously, the transitions are the most expensive of these three pair, but still, at $133.55, that's like, $41, $42 a pair on average. So yes, get your glasses online. I know a lot of people are confused about how that works. I did a video on this some time ago. If you want more information, mention it in the comments and I will do another video. I'll give you all the information you need. I do this all the time because, quite frankly, if I had to go out and pay the kind of prices they are charging at optical centers for my 3 or 4 pair of glasses every year, and yes, I do get 3 or 4 pair of glasses a year. I don't know what to tell you. It's an absolute necessity in my life. Consequently, there are glasses on my nose every waking moment. So yeah, I probably am going to have more glasses than most people, but also I have 2 prescriptions and have to switch back and forth between them because I've never been able to adjust to bifocals. And I don't know what to say about that either. Maybe it's laziness. But if I had to pay the optical store prices for these, I could never do this. That is insane. And I can remember from my childhood when eyeglasses were running at $100 or $200 a pair, back in the days when $100 or $200 was somebody's take-home pay for a week. So do I feel bad about taking the business away from the American optical industry and sending it to Brazil or wherever these eyeglasses are being made? Oh, not one bit. As far as I am concerned, this is an industry that exploited the market for decades. And I'm sorry if they can't keep up with the competition now, but I am certainly going to take advantage of the opportunity I have to get my glasses at a reasonable price. And I strongly advise you to do it too, because I know there are plenty of people out there who simply do not change their eyeglasses as often as they should, and will be walking around in glasses that are not optimized for their current state of vision, simply because going out and paying $300 or $400 for a pair of eyeglasses is out of their price range, that's tragic, that is heartbreaking, and if I can do anything to make that burden easier, I will. So if you want more information, let me know in the comments. We'll do a whole video about this. All right, we will be back after a quick look at the intro. So I have been seeing a lot in the news and social media and whatever the public outreach mechanisms are these days about the food stamps / EBT program, mostly because it's been cut in a lot of areas, and with the government shutdown, as I understand it, some states just simply did not have the ability to make these benefits available to people. And I thought I would give you my perspective on this, which is the perspective of a former social worker. So I was looking at some of the stuff on social media involving food stamp / EBT fraud is just mind-blowing. So I see videos talking about people who were getting literally thousands of dollars in EBT benefits every month. They come on little credit card, sort of like a debit card now. And you just go in, swipe your card, and it's like a done deal. And I do not know how it is that anybody is qualifying for thousands of dollars worth of benefits every month. And I would have to say, over a certain financial top limit, you really need to look at that and say, is this legitimate? How is this happening? Because you got to have a lot of kids to be qualifying for that kind of money. So I thought we would just take a little trip in the Wayback Machine. And I decided to focus on the mid-1980s. And the reason for this is because I was in the trenches in the mid-1980s. That was when I was actively involved in case management as a social worker. And it just so happens that I remember the exact amount of benefits people were getting in that particular period, because it had been stable for a couple of years. So, a single mother on public assistance, welfare, with 2 children would be receiving, I should probably say this is in Rhode Island. Now, Rhode Island had higher benefits than a lot of other states because it's a northeastern state, and they tended to have some pretty high benefits. It was not the highest in the country, but it was a long way from the lowest in the country, which were some of the states in the Deep South. So, single mom, 2 children, $545 a month. Single mom, 1 child, $454 a month. those figures were easy to remember. It was nothing but 5s and 4s. And most of my clients, I would say a good 60 to 70% of them, fell into that category, 1 or 2 children. I did have clients with more children. I did not have clients with 0 children, because at that time, public assistance benefits, it was AFDC, Aids to Families with Dependent Children, required that you have children. You could qualify when you were expecting, but in general, there had to be a baby somewhere. So that was the amount they would get in their check. And we look at this is very, very little money. I can remember at the time, that was probably about half my mortgage payment every month. So yeah, not a lot of money. And again, major Northeast city where rent prices are high and the cost of living is a little higher than average. I'm not going to try to compare it to like New York City or downtown Los Angeles, but a little higher than average. So that was the amount of money they were getting in a check that they could cash. They could get that money cash, but they would have to use it to pay their rent, their utilities, any other cash expenses. And, well, as I say, it was half of my mortgage payment. So we're not talking about a lot of money for rent, just to put a roof over your head, never mind utilities or any of the other incidental expenses one needs to pay in cash. My client population got an average of $300 a month in food stamps. And that would depend on how many children you had. But again, I'm just giving you an average. And you could easily feed a family of 3 or 4 people on $300 a month if you were a reasonably careful shopper. If what you were doing was going out and buying food that you would then take home and cook. If you were going out and buying prepackaged, pre-prepared food, TV dinners that you would take home and throw in the microwave or throw in the oven, yeah, $300 wasn't going to go very far. And the problems I would see month to month as a social worker, as the person who was charged with helping this client population get from one month to the next, hopefully, the goal was to improve their lives incrementally along the way and eventually position them to get out of the welfare system. That was a challenge. And I found over the years that some of my clients had an easier time than others dealing with that $300 food stamp limit combined with the cash limit, which was hardly ever much more than the cost of their rent. The ones who were the best able to cope with it were not the native Rhode Islanders. The people who were the best able to cope with it were the immigrant populations. So my clients from the Dominican Republic, from Haiti, from Puerto Rico, from anywhere in the Caribbean, and I had clients from Nevis and St. Kitts and, odd little places that you hardly ever hear of. I also had clients from Cambodia, from Vietnam, from Cape Verde. I had a lot of clients from Cape Verde for some reason. And these were the people who could maximize the daylights out of those food stamps. Why? Because they didn't shop the way your typical American shops. They did not go into the store and say, I have children, I am going to get Cocoa Puffs and throw that into my shopping cart. Because Cocoa Puffs are expensive, and these are people who did not know what Cocoa Puffs were. Period. They see Cocoa Puffs clueless. It's not what they were feeding their children. They were feeding their children things like farina or other kinds of cereal grains. Our Dominican and Puerto Rican population were usually feeding their kids red beans and rice for breakfast, which, by the way, is not unhealthy. It's just something that we're not accustomed to. And it was basically their staple food. If you went into a Caribbean Spanish-speaking household, you were going to find a pot of red beans and rice on the burner of the stove, and that's all there was to it. And I can tell you this also from having lived in Puerto Rico. That's just the way it is. That was the staple. The thing is, red beans and rice are not expensive. These are really, really cheap foods. So that $300 a month in food stamps went a long way. Also, our non-native population, the people who came in from Europe or from Asia, were not going into the store. They were not buying steak or roasts or beef in general. Just really wasn't. This is not part of their regular diet. And if they did do a roast, it was usually on a very special occasion, mostly because beef is not common in other parts of the world. It's very common for us here in the U.S. and probably not uncommon in Northern Europe, Western Europe, but certainly in places like the Caribbean where you don't, well, the Caribbean is not known for its cattle ranches. Let's just put it that way. Things like chicken would be much more common. For my Asian clients, fish. If it swam in the ocean, they knew how to cook it. So they were able to keep the cost of their groceries down. However, they were still coping with the additional problem of food stamps can be used for food. And I remember one of my clients sitting across from my desk one day and saying, "This is not right. This is not fair. I cannot go into the store and get a tube of toothpaste, but I can go into the store and get a case of Doritos if I want." You can't argue with that. She's right. That was not fair. That was not just. That was not reasonable. But the food stamps and its successor program, EBT, was designed strictly to feed people. See, the history of food stamps has less to do with feeding a low-income population than it does have to do with supporting American agriculture. So, in between the wars, Great Depression, get in there, in that time frame, they instituted the first of these experimental food stamp programs, where they would make vouchers available to low-income families in order to help them purchase food from American farms. So it was considered win-win. The farmers were able to sell their crops, and the low-income people were able to buy that food. And like I say, win-win. It was great. And then, of course, the war came along. There was rationing. We came out of the war. And then in the late 60s, early 70s, when we started looking at the war on poverty, basically, people started thinking, well, this is a good idea. We need to feed people who simply do not have the resources to feed themselves. And so the modern food stamp program was available to low-income people, working, non-working, etc. Now, my client population was non-working. It was women on aid to families with dependent children, which we casually refer to as welfare. So that's the population that I was focused on. The fact is, we didn't have any program in place to help with things like personal hygiene essentials. No laundry detergent, no body soap, no shampoo, no toothpaste, no deodorant, nothing that you or I would feel deprived of if suddenly we woke up one morning and there was not a single scratch of soap or laundry detergent or, oh my goodness, anything. I mean, how are you going to brush your teeth if you don't have toothpaste? Well, and I can tell you, baking soda. Basically, that's what a lot of my clients were using, because you can get baking soda on food stamps. They were also using baking soda as a cleaning agent because they simply could not buy a bar of soap. So, here's where the story gets interesting. At least I think it's interesting. Usually the food stamps came out, I think it was something like the 3rd or 5th of the month. The food stamps would come out. And I had a short list of clients, it was 3 or 4 of them, who would call me whenever the food stamps came out and say, "Hi, Sue, food stamps have come out. I was going to do my grocery shopping, and knowing that you are stuck at work all day and you don't drive, maybe you'd like a little help." And I would say, "That is so kind of you. Stop by my office on your way to the store and I will give you a list and some money." Almost as if that whole conversation had been scripted, right? Well, the fact is it was. I would give them money, a grocery list, also a gasoline voucher, because they were driving their cars, they were using their gas, and say, "If you would be so kind as to pick this up for me." Now, if the money, the cash money I gave them, was not used for the food items on my grocery list, and those food items happened to come out of the food stamps, well, I mean, let's face it, you have someone with cash and food stamps in their pocket and they're buying things, how can they really say what exactly is being spent on which purchase? A lot of plausible deniability in that. And they would go off, get the food. They would, here's where it got really good for me. They would stop by my house and drop the bags off in my garage. And that's how really nice it was from my point of view. Meanwhile, they were, in a manner of speaking, selling their food stamps dollar for dollar. So they would spend $20 worth of food stamps on my groceries. They would get a $20 bill in that envelope. Win-win. And because we were very, very careful in how we structured this arrangement, there was enough plausible deniability so that even if the welfare department knew exactly what they were doing, by the way, they probably did, there was nowhere to go on it. No fraud could be proven. I was getting the groceries. I had given them the money. They were using the money for whatever they needed to use it for. It was a way of sort of, I was putting my thumb on the scale, so to speak, in order to help even things out for them. It gave them the money to buy things like baby diapers. And when we were in this period, this is the mid-1980s, even if you wanted to use cloth diapers for your babies, which nobody wanted to use, I'm not even sure where you would buy them at that point. They had just phased out of society 10, 15 years earlier. So, yes, was I part of a welfare fraud? I think you could say that I was. Am I sorry for it? Do I feel bad for it? Not in the least. Because these women were up against an impossible set of circumstances. Now, Some of my clients who were from the suburbs, who probably didn't need public assistance to begin with, but qualified for it and were there every month for the check, they could sell their food stamps dollar for dollar. They could bring the food stamps home. Mom would give them cash. She would use the food stamps to do her family shopping. Worked like a charm. But my client population, who were more marginalized, were living in communities where they didn't know anybody who was in a position to buy the food stamps dollar for dollar. If they were selling their food stamps, which they were not legally allowed to do, and they could have gotten into a lot of trouble for that, well, frankly, they could have gotten kicked off the food stamp program for that. If they had sold their food stamps, they would be lucky to get 50 cents on the dollar for it, which is a very bad deal for them. So I never at any time purchased food stamps from anyone because, again, like I said, that's illegal. But there was enough wiggle room in this little setup that we had. They would do my shopping for me. They would bring it to my house. Why? Because they were kind people. And if anyone ever asked them why they were doing it, like I say, those conversations were scripted. They would all say, but she works all day and she is blind and she cannot drive. The least I can do is help her shop. I mean, somebody would want to give them a medal, at the very least, give them a pat on the back for such kindness. So we were able to sort of snake a bit of a way around it. I was not the only social worker who did this. Most of us engaged in something along these lines just to help people out. For example, I spoke about the gas vouchers. I would buy them from my local filling station, gasoline station, service station, petrol station, whatever word you use for it. Servo. I'm sorry, I forgot the Australians. My local servo. I would go there and get $5 gas vouchers. The great thing is, if I bought $50 worth of vouchers, they would give me 12 vouchers instead of 10. So win-win, everybody benefits. And then I was able to give a gasoline voucher to a client whenever they might need it. And sometimes they would get themselves into situations where they really they had like no gas in their cars. So I used to keep that sort of thing in my desk drawer. And all of us kept a little emergency stash of Lord only knows what in our desk drawers, because we were dealing with a population that was just right on the edge. Any little thing could tip them over. Anything. A sick child could throw their entire month out of whack. So, yeah, we had to get creative. And like I say, I do not feel bad for this in the least. I feel the system failed them by not providing at least some mechanism for them to acquire the minimal personal hygiene items that we all need to get from one month to the next. And it did seem quite a tragedy to me that my client population, who were very frugal with their food stamps at the end of the month, might have $50 extra worth of food stamps, but they could not use that for baby diapers. They could not use that for toothpaste. It just seemed decidedly unfair to me. So, am I sorry for what I did? No. I have no problem being an anarchist and rousing the rabble. But was it something I could do across the board? Absolutely not. I certainly had people on my caseload that could not be trusted with $20 in cash. Absolutely not. people who were substance abusers, people who were alcohol involved. Sometimes it was simply a question of someone who was in a vulnerable situation, and the ex or the baby daddy or the guy next door would just come over and take it away from them. So it wasn't something that could be like every client on my client list could be involved in this little, well, I don't want to say scheme. Scheme sounds so bad. This little circumvention of an unfair rule. But enough of them could be so that it could make a little bit of a difference for some people. I always felt that the real flaw in the system was that the system did not have something similar to food stamps for other non-food essentials. After all, we had a food stamp program in place already. Grocery stores were already taking these food coupons, and you would just pull them out of a book. It was like green stamps, pretty much, only bigger. Pull them out of a book, use them to pay for your groceries. Oh, by the way, if you got change back from your food stamps, they would write it on a little piece of paper. It's like, from this store, 13 cents, and that was it. They couldn't even give you back 13 cents in change, because this was supposed to be a completely cashless system. But since they had the system in place, it always seemed to me that without very much difficulty, they could have issued a different book of similar stamps that would cover things like cleaning supplies, personal hygiene items, vitamins for the children. Vitamins are not food, by the way. You cannot buy vitamins on food stamps. So, yeah, that would not have been too difficult, but it would have made a major impact on the lives of people who were struggling. So, anyway, I thought I would throw that out because that will help you understand why, when I see stories of people getting thousands of dollars in EBT benefits, or I watch videos of people going into hair salons and charging a manicure against their EBT card, which apparently some people are able to do, or taking that EBT card into stores that sell items other than groceries and, go off to Walmart and buy toys and games with it. Oh, not to say that I've ever seen Walmart do this, but stores like Walmart, let's just put it that way, because I know there are some out there, because I've seen the videos. And that I consider to be fraud. I really do. Mostly because when it goes on to such a scale, wow, you have to wonder what the little finagling is really looking like. So, I thought I would just throw that out. And yes, as I say, what I did was, I suppose, if you want to put the correct spin on it, well, maybe not the correct spin on it, the spin of your choice on it, sure, it would be easy to say it was fraud. But again, there was enough plausible deniability, and nothing that was going on was technically illegal. But it was how we managed to finesse a bad situation. Am I sorry for it? Not one bit. Would I do it again if I had the choice? In a heartbeat. Because I saw how difficult situations were for some of these women. And that's one of the reasons, frankly, that welfare fraud ticks me off pretty gosh darn badly when I see it on such grand scales, and I remember how much any little tiny bit of extra assistance meant to the people I was working for, and knowing that they weren't trying to scam anyone. They were not playing this as a you take care of me scheme. It was just people who were living on the edge with their backs up against the wall and nowhere else to turn. So, anyway, I thought I would share that. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on this? Because, frankly, I have mixed feelings about it. I know these are good programs. I know some people desperately need them. I also know there's a lot of fraud, and there are a lot of people who are choosing this. This is a lifestyle choice for them. There are people who are saying, I could work if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. And that's a problem. So, Audie has not shown up yet. He's probably still out playing. We are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. Thank you for being with me, and I hope to see you again next time. In the meanwhile, have a terrific day.